Hey, what's up, guys? Dubs here for another segment of Dubs Nation. Don't forget to subscribe, but more importantly, please take a second right now and just hit the like button. Share also. Let's show these people at YouTube what videos are being watched the most. So, every time I think I can go ahead and make a segment on something different or something new happening, like there's a lot happening. I mean, Trump has recently got a deal with Serbia and Kosovo going on. There's a lot of things happening in the world, but the most consequential is the violence that's happening in the streets. And just when I think that I can jump to something else, we have another bout of Antifa and Black Lives Matter violence. I mean, just terrible stuff. So, and why it's so consequential is because this is America, okay? You don't get beaten by mobs for no reason in America. That's not a thing. It's not supposed to be. Just for standing there, just for supporting a specific presidential candidate. Nobody ever beat people for supporting Barack Obama. Nobody ever attacked them and ran them down the street. So, over the weekend, the hashtag WalkAway people had been doing their big rallies. They're going all across the country. If you don't know about them, I'm sure you do. But if you don't, go over there and check out their page. Hashtag WalkAway. It's a campaign started by Brandon Straka. He's was a former liberal, and he realized how just terrible and radical the left had become, and it's an anti-leftist group. It's not a pro-Trump group per se. Not everybody there supports Trump. They just don't support the left anymore. They're very adamant about it being anti-left. And one of the podcasters that I like to follow is Dr. Karlyn and Brandon, and she has been traveling with them and speaking with them since her story matches with Brandon's. And they all have a similar story. They're all former Democrats, former liberals. Some of them very liberal. Brandon happens to be gay. And it's not an LGBTQ movement either or anything like that, but there are a lot of gay members. So they're doing their thing. They're going all across the country. And they were in Dallas, and Dallas happened to be having lots of Black Lives Matter protests again as well. I don't know if they knew that the hashtag WalkAway was going to be there or whatever the case was, but they were all over these poor people. And I'm just going to show you guys real quick what was taking place.
People outside the police station, a mob of Black Lives Matter protesters. They've already thrown shit at us. The police are not here. We're trying to get away from them. They're attacking gay people. Attacking women.
Are you here with them? Are you here with them? Then you do some work.
We're basically running to the end of the street right now because that's where the cops are. We're being chased by a mob of people outside.
It takes incredible restraint. Let me tell you something. It takes real restraint to not turn around and just break these people's faces. It really does, because they knew too that if they turned around and they engaged at all with Black Lives Matter, that they would be perpetrated as the aggressors. Of course, the Trump people, they're not even right wing either. Most of these people are not necessarily conservatives. I tell you what, they probably are going to be after all this, though. You push these people further and further to the right by doing this kind of stuff. And this wasn't it was marred. The whole event was marred. If you want to see more of it, go Dr. Karlyn Brandon. She gives the full outline of everything. It just so happened that the Dallas Police Department was not helping them at all. This was actually out front of the Dallas precinct. They were not helping them at all. Whether they were told to stand down or told not to engage was probably what happened. But still, I mean, you see a violent mob attacking a group of people and they don't help. This is what the left wants. They want the police to second guess themselves. They want them to not want to get involved. So now you're you're left to defend yourself. This is one of the events that started the whole thing. So that was one of the things that started it all, and that the big guy was a security guard for the WalkAway people. And as you can see, because some of the other videos that were posted kind of showed a bad angle, and it just showed the security guard taking him down. As you can see from that angle, the Black Lives Matter guy was shoving the megaphone into the dude's throat. Obviously, clearly putting his hands on him first, and then he took him down. That started everything, and then they just started chasing these poor people down the street, really going after them, throwing stuff at them. Take a look at what happened to Brandon.
I'm pressed. I'm pressed.
You disrespectful.
We really own it. We're not taking that.
Go faster now! Go faster!
Don't get watched.
Go faster! Why the
We're being chased by a mob of people outside the police station, a mob of Black Lives Matter.
Who do these people think they are? I mean, really, who do they think they are? They operate with impunity now. This is, like I said, what the left wants. So the Dallas PD actually ended up arresting the security guard as well as the Black Lives Matter protester that was in the original altercation. Turns out the BLM guy had a rap sheet. He was wanted for felony, whatever, of course. And they ended up holding the security guard, detained him for hours and hours, charged him too. And they just stood there. Dallas PD stood there, didn't do anything. These people had to run down to them while they were doing a patrol in the street. So, like I said, I'm pretty sure they were told to stand down by this woman. The Dallas police chief, Renee Hall, announces her resignation. Now, it wasn't because of that, anything having to do with that incident, but it just so happens now that this woman here decides that she's going to resign. Renee Hall is resigning as police chief of the Dallas Police Department, city officials announced on Tuesday. Hall's resignation goes into effect at the end of the year. She initially said she would resign November 10th, but the city manager asked her to stay longer. In her letter of resignation, Hall wrote that she has received inquiries about future career opportunities in recent months. As you can imagine, for many reasons, I must keep my next career step confidential, Hall wrote in a letter. So keep an eye out for the Dallas police chief to pop up in some kind of other more political job. We'll just say that. There she is right there. So that wasn't the only bout of violence that happened over the weekend. Riots had also broken out in Rochester, New York. Now, what happened in Rochester, New York is the authorities released a video of an incident that took place between a black man that was having an emotional breakdown. He was also on drugs. He was what they call in law enforcement an EDP, an emotionally disturbed person, and also on drugs. He was completely naked, walking and running down the streets, and people were calling 911. He was harassing people. So he had just been released by the hospital, And police got there, and obviously this was just when COVID was spiking up too. So they got there, they told him to get on the ground. He actually did comply. He did, but he was clearly out of his mind, obviously. And then he began spitting. He began telling the officers, "Give me your gun. I need it." He wasn't actually reaching for the gun. To make a long story short, they put a spit bag on him. Now the media and everybody else tried to portray it as this. They put like a burlap sack over him. This is a spit bag is a common thing to be used, especially when COVID was starting. It's just a mesh hood. It's just a mesh hat. That's all it is, covering so when people spit, it doesn't hit the officers, because he was spitting a lot. It's easy to breathe through. So then what happened was he asked for the officer's weapon again, and then sat up. So the officers put him back on the ground and restrained him, and he started to fight. And what they assessed that he had was excited delirium. Now, this is something that does not get any portrayal in the media. It doesn't get any attention at all, but it is a relatively common thing. Excited delirium is when somebody usually happens when they're on drugs and they are having just an insane episode mentally and physically. And found that he was on PCP, which is a common drug that puts people in that. It brings their body temperature up to insane levels, which is why he took his clothes off. He didn't know where the hell he was. His heart rate is going through the roof. His mental state is inconsolable. So what officers often do is they press down on them and hold that person down so they don't flail about, hurt officers and hurt themselves, bang their heads on the ground. They're banging their heads on other things. That's a common thing that happens, people. They bang their people going through excited delirium will flail and fly, throw their arms and their head about, often banging their head on the police vehicle or on the ground. And police are responsible for somebody in their that they have detained in their custody. Somebody that's in their custody, they are responsible for their health, which is why when I did my video on George Floyd, I still maintain that the officers were completely neglectful there. Even if the cause of death was overdose for George Floyd and not the knee on the neck, still the officer has it's his duty to render aid and do everything in his power to care for a person in his custody, regardless of what the crime they committed was. Officers are not the judge, jury, and executioner, okay? They have to render aid, or they have to care for, make sure they don't get hurt. That's why when you put somebody in the back of a police car, you have to put the seatbelt on. They're in your care, okay? So George Floyd, Chauvin did not do anything to help him. He did not do anything. He rendered no aid. He didn't even monitor his vitals. He didn't stop putting the knee on his neck when he stopped breathing. None of that. This case, they were on top of Daniel Prude while he was flailing about, and then they're waiting for the EMTs. They immediately realized that he was having some fluid come out of his mouth, and he stopped moving. They were checking with him, making sure he was still with it. They thought he was throwing up. They rolled him over immediately, started checking him and working on him. And unfortunately, he passed away. And then it was ruled that he passed due to asphyxia. However, it is common that the coroner will rule a death from excited delirium as asphyxia because they don't really know what is happening. They didn't really understand what happened. They just see that the person died and there is no external injuries or external wounds. What happens is their body just is in such an excited state, in such an amped up state that their heart gives out and they die. Okay, it's something that happens, and it's something that is controversial, but it's also something that it doesn't get enough medical diagnosis either. But the EMT, as soon as they arrived on the scene, they said, guys, this is clearly excited delirium. So either way, that incident, and the footage from that sparked protests and violent riots in Rochester. So real quick, this is how the Washington Post characterizes its events, okay? The city's top police officials on Tuesday suddenly announced plans to step down amid an ongoing controversy about their department's treatment of Daniel Prude, a black man who died in police custody while suffering a mental health crisis, days after video footage was released showing officers putting a hood on him and pinning him to the ground. There's a little bit more context there, okay? They do the same thing here while describing the George Floyd incident. The demonstrations in Rochester marked the latest flashpoint in America's summer of protest, which began when George Floyd was filmed in May as he begged for air while pinned under Minneapolis police officers' knee. Cities from coast to coast have since experienced social justice protests, some of them violent, amid intense scrutiny on police tactics and call to cut police funding and shift more money to social services, especially for mental health. So this is what they do. They leave out important context. Now, George Floyd was saying he could not breathe before the police even touched him. Again, go back to what I said about Derek Chauvin failing to render aid to George Floyd. He definitely committed a crime, and I believe he belongs in jail. That was an unjustified action that he took. It's going to happen sometimes, and we should definitely always take as many steps as possible to make sure that happens as little as possible or never again. But this incident, Daniel Prude, definitely deserves a full investigation, without a doubt. And they need to figure out if something else could have been done, and if it truly was excited delirium that killed him, or if it was the combination of them restraining him, or if he would have... Listen, sometimes people, just the action of interacting with the police and them having to restrain him, regardless of where they touch him, they have to hold him at some point. Just that extra amount of exertion on the person's body, and Daniel Prude's body, can cause him to go into cardiac arrest and die. That's just things like that happen. And these idiots in the media and on the left, they have no idea how to interact with somebody that's an EDP or having a mental health crisis. They don't. And it's since the country has stopped putting people with mental health problems in facilities, because a lot of the facilities were run down and they got poor treatment, but then we just put them on their merry way and let them go on the streets. And now anybody knows you can't walk down New York City without having somebody that's clearly mentally ill, jump on top of you, that trying to get cigarettes off you and money, or, acting crazy on the subway. You know that. So these people have no clue how to interact with anybody that's having a violent mental health crisis. Social workers aren't going to be able to do it. They're going to need somebody there to protect them, because these people still get violent. And it's just a very difficult situation. More training needed? Sure, absolutely. There's always more training is always a good thing. But the riots, the Rochester was not demonstrations. It was turned into violent riots once again.
Don't give us our shit. Don't shut shit down.
Right here, you're watching Black Lives Matter and Antifa riot group storm a restaurant, and start flipping tables and rushing all the patrons out.
shutting your party down. Calm down. Calm down.
Listen to that pig trying to justify what she's doing, telling the people, "Oh, calm down. Nobody's going to touch you. We're just shutting the party down." As everybody around her is smashing shit. I mean, these people are just disgusting. They're just disgusting. They have to be stopped. They chased all those people out. And oh, by the way, the restaurant owners, they sided with the protesters because they're cowards and they don't want their business to get burned down. Listen, I'm sure I kind of feel for them. You know, you're put in a tough position. What do you do? But if you bend over for these people, they're not going to leave you alone. They're just going to keep smacking you over the head. They're going to come back because they know they can do it to you, just like a typical bully from elementary school. You have to stand up to these people.
We shut shit down. We shut shit down.
No, listen, don't leave. That shit ain't gonna work.
Been saying about me.
Shut the fuck up. If you ain't about the movement, then shut the fuck up. Leave this movement. This movement. If you're not ready, shut the fuck up. Stop fucking touching me. Stop 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 touching me. The battle is
Get lower. Since you have refused to leave the roadway, you will be placed under arrest on the charge of disorderly conduct. If you do not
I love how these demonstrations always have shit burned down. They're demonstrating that they can burn the community down and beat people. And one of my favorites is the "don't touch me" as I'm going to get in your face. I'm going to get in your face and then tell you not to touch me. These people deserve to listen. You have to fight back against these people. You cannot let them bend you over like that. You can't let them back you down. You can't show any weakness or subservience to them. I'm not saying get into physical fights with everybody like that. You always got to protect yourself. It's self-defense only, but you cannot back down to these people. So anyways, what is this all resulting in? And why is it so consequential? Because, again, this is the United States of America. This does not happen in this country. It's not supposed to. And if it does, we have a police force that we pay a lot of money for, a lot of tax money, to stop it. But the left is clever, and they've hamstrung our police. And now they can't step in most of the time. So, with all that in mind, President Trump is finally getting the boost in the polls that everybody has been waiting for. And unfortunately, it's taken violent riots to do so and wake a lot of people up. But what we've seen is, and I'll be honest, I'm one to say that I don't believe that all the polls are wrong. But they can't be this, they couldn't be, there's no way Trump could have been that far down. Just like in 2016. I still think he needs to do more, but this is a good sign. He's been getting consistent Rasmussen approval ratings at 50% or higher. And Rasmussen has always been the one that has been able to more closely capture or properly capture the sentiment and the way the voters are leaning. But I believe the best sign out of the polls has been the Florida poll, because everybody knows that Trump is not winning without Florida. Or if he doesn't win Florida, it's a very, very long shot, very big long shot that he can take the presidency without it anyway. And the new Marist poll has him tied and up 1 with Biden. Good. Other polls, so the national polls, the media likes to tout the national polls. They're useless. They are useless. The polls that matter are in the battleground states. And in all the battleground states now, he's within the margin of error for every single one. Pennsylvania, he just got one from Susquehanna. He's only down 2. Okay, Arizona, they have him down 5 and some, others down 2, within the margin of error. Now, there are some outliers, like you'll see him down 9 here. This one in Wisconsin. This one, they have him up 1 in North Carolina. Now, that's another one. That's very positive, because he has been down in every single one of these. And as we know, he took North Carolina last time pretty handily. Okay. Now, they also have him down 4 in Ohio. Ohio has been flip-flopping back and forth the whole time, though, and I personally think that he's going to be able to take Ohio okay. Michigan, they have him only down 5. Again, within the margin of error, or just about there. Okay, same with Wisconsin. And others as well. So this is why the violence is so consequential, because everybody knows that the left is not going to do anything to stop this, and it's not going to stop. And it may not even stop if Trump is elected either, but at least he'll have the gall to do something about it. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there, guys. Next segment is going to be on some actual news. It's going to be on some things that have been happening around the world. And then I'm going to also be starting a flashback series where we go and look at some of the policies from 2016 that Trump has tried to implement and said that he wanted to, and where we are today. Because everything seems to be getting swallowed up by, the fake news of the Atlantic story, which now has 21 people on the record refuting it. And by, just other left-wing propaganda. Trump was able to better control the news cycle in 2016 because he was on the outside looking in. But now he has to run the country and campaign for himself at the same time, as well as having a pandemic on his hands. And if you ask me, I think he's doing a damn good job of all of them, because that's a lot to juggle, especially the pandemic. That's been a lot on him. So anyway, we're going to go through all that. I'm going to have a lot more for you guys. Thanks for sticking around for this one. I'll see you again.